what gives me hope is that now we're seeing some very non-traditional collaborations that are happening between payers and providers and pharma and biotech. All of that is underpinned with how regulators are now starting to take a very interesting role in trying to understand the role of technology for this system. And I think that gives me a lot of hope that this is no longer a world where we are, being stiff-armed or of not being able to, we can't do this because regulators won't accept it, to seeing regulators are now trying to understand the use of technology to support the betterment of humanity. And so not just, the potential to use AI in a way that supports the entire ecosystem, that's what gives me hope.
New choices, new players, new models of care. Consumer-first healthcare is everywhere. For us to build the future, to see what's new, we gotta look at the world from a different point of view. Consumer innovation ain't going away. I say it's here to stay. Today it leads the way. We gotta drop the silos. We're all the same team. Experience, business, tech, and marketing. So join us now. Join the revolution. Consumer-first health is the evolution. Status quo or like status no. Yeah, this is the healthcare rap. Yo, come on, let's go. Hey, welcome back to the leading podcast about consumer-centered healthcare. What if healthcare was actually centered around what consumers need and expect? We're talking with leaders who are making it happen, one experience at a time. I'm Jared Johnson, and this is episode 424. Today, we have the flavor of the week about the launch of General Medicine. What should you know about the new venture from former Amazon and PillPack leaders, and how could their consumer transformation architecture lead to a more shoppable consumer experience? I'll talk about that. Then Shweta Maniar, Global Director of Health and Life Sciences at Google, shares how she thinks healthcare will look 3 to 5 years from now. Spoiler alert, it involves reducing administrative burdens for clinicians and improving the patient experience at the enterprise level. It's time for the awesomeness, y'all. Are you ready? Let's go. Flavor of the week. A new virtual care company just hit the scene, and it's not trying to look like a health system. It's trying to look like a store. I'm talking about General Medicine, which launched publicly on May 22nd. It was founded by former Amazon and PillPack leaders and launched with a clear mission: to build a healthcare store that gives everyone access to the best care in the world. It's not part of Amazon, but let's just say it shares the blueprint: logistics mastery, seamless coordination, and customer obsession. General Medicine is a virtual urgent care service and more. It's built to handle everything from UTIs and dermatology consults to complex multi-specialty care. And it does all of that without requiring a subscription, by accepting insurance, and by giving upfront pricing, something most health systems still haven't figured out. I found a few features interesting here based on their announcement. First, it's meant to be shoppable. Now, I don't mean any offense by referring to certain aspects of healthcare as shoppable, transactional, or even merchandising. In this case, you can browse services like an online storefront or text an open-ended question and get guided through the process, including specialist consults, labs, imaging, and prescriptions. Second, no mystery pricing. Their platform decodes your insurance plan and gives accurate estimates across their own services and outside providers. And third, solving care logistics. Remember PillPack's back-end magic? This team has built a similar OS for healthcare, coordinating everything behind the scenes so it feels effortless for the user. What's the consumer lens here? It's important to note that this is not Digital Front Door 2.0. This is consumer transformation architecture, and it's designed around what we want: same-day access, transparent pricing, coordinated care, text-based triage, real humans who ask the right questions, and logistics that don't make our lives harder. It's not pretending to fix everything, but it's closing some serious gaps. So what does this mean for traditional healthcare? Honestly, it means the excuses are wearing a little thin. If a startup can integrate insurance, logistics, diagnostics, and real specialist consults into a single experience, then what's exactly stopping the incumbents? I think it's safe to say the bar has officially been raised. After all, if you're still asking patients to wait 26 days for an appointment or telling them we'll call you back to schedule your labs, you're losing to a team that's building this like it's Amazon 2.0, minus the Prime membership. Let's spend time examining how General Medicine is pushing the standard for consumer-centered care, not as a retail sideshow or digital gimmick, but as a legitimate new channel for helping people live better. That's another way that we'll build the healthcare of tomorrow, and that's the flavor of the week. Shed is revolutionizing health and wellness by making wellness available to everyone. Through personalized nutrition, high-quality supplements, and science-backed wellness strategies, Shed empowers individuals to take control of their health and live longer, healthier lives. Not sure where to start? Try NAD+, the ultimate coenzyme that supports cells, DNA repair, and anti-aging. Or maybe you'll like LDN for managing chronic pain, autoimmune diseases, and metabolic health challenges. Visit Try Shed to start your wellness journey today. That's tryshed.com.
The flow.
All right, everyone, let's get into the flow. Please join me. I got a super special guest this week. I'm here with Shweta Maniar. Shweta is the Global Director of Health and Life Sciences at Google. Welcome to the Healthcare Wrap.
Thank you for having me. Really excited to be here.
I think our listeners are going to be really excited about not just the perspective clearly with the work that's going on at Google, but just what you're seeing. There are so many questions these days about like what's on people's radar screen. What are we looking at here? Like what's going on? And so I'm looking forward to that kind of that macro view, but also I know we're going to drill down in a couple of specific areas. Before we get started with all of that though, let's give our listeners a little bit of background on you. Can you give us maybe like the 2-minute version of who you are and what you do? We'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a little important to share because my background is coming from the healthcare and life science industry. I have worked in hospital systems, in research, in pharmaceutical companies, even worked with medical devices. And so the idea has been now to take all of these experiences that I have and now on the Google side, helping to use I would consider that practical experience in the healthcare life science ecosystem. And how do you now, I used to be on the receiving end of technology. And so now sitting on this side, how do you apply technology to support this ecosystem where, and we'll talk a little bit about this as we go on in our conversation, but how do we look at technology to be a foundational part of the entire healthcare ecosystem, the healthcare and life sciences ecosystem, where it's not just talking about different parts of it, but also how they're interconnected and how technology plays a role there. So I look at the experiences that I've had working for organizations like the Cleveland Clinic, like the Scripps Clinic, or working for large pharmaceutical companies like Roche. All of those experiences have actually brought me to what I'm doing here now at Google, which is how do we look at Google's technology, Google Cloud's technology, and apply the technology and tools in a way that's most meaningful and most beneficial to the healthcare and life science industry.
That's an interesting point, right, about technology. So it's what empowers and enables everything we're talking about. And yet when it's working well, the user, in this case, like the clinician or the patient, doesn't even want to know it's there. They want to know it's in the background. So it's kind of a challenge with tech in general in healthcare, which is one part of the fun, I guess, of the challenge of working in this space. What do you enjoy about working in this space? Like, what's one of your favorite things about working in healthcare?
I think one of my favorite thing is I was saying, I used to be on the receiving end of technology pitches. I very, very distinctly remember when apps were becoming a big thing and we were thinking, hey, can this mobile medical app diagnose my blindness or diagnose this rash that I have on my arm? And it was an uncharted territory, right? We were trying to figure out what can these tools do? And then at the same time, I used to see life science organizations, healthcare organizations are wondering, okay, in addition to creating my products, now do I need to invest into developing apps that go hand in hand with our products, right? So it was a really different and interesting time of really trying to chart how is technology playing a role. And fast forward 10, 12, 15 years, there's no question about if technology is going to be part of the healthcare and life science ecosystem. It is how deeply and how fast, right? How is it going to genuinely improve lives? How can you use technology to accelerate finding a new life-saving therapy? Or how can we help caregivers and clinicians provide better care? And my personal favorite, the reason that I like to work in this cross-section of technology and healthcare and life sciences is ultimately we all get to be the owners of our healthcare or health data. So empowering patients with information. And I think it's really interesting because Google's perspective is how to democratize data and access to information. And if you extend that to the healthcare and life sciences side, is how do you democratize the access to your healthcare information as an individual patient, right? How can you actually be able to feel more empowered with the information because of your specific background or your specific information. And so we shouldn't be in a world where you're thinking about, if I move hospitals, my record doesn't, it's a big lift to get your record to move over. And so it's really interesting to see how technology is actually playing an underlying role in how this ecosystem is moving forward.
Let's talk a little bit more about the current state, because that is where we are right now. That's today. What would you like our listeners to know about what Google is doing in healthcare today?
When we're talking about where we're focusing on the foundation, we're investing, of course, in foundational, secure, and an intelligent platform for both healthcare delivery and for life science innovation. I will maybe describe it from a key pillars perspective of focusing on operational efficiencies, right? There are Gemini-powered AI agents that can streamline workflows, claims processing. Life science companies have so much to focus on their stringent regulations. There's a lot of opportunity to support some of their efficiency or operational efficiency workflows. In a healthcare context, it's about boosting productivity for clinicians, but then also the life sciences side, or kind of the research side, is also how do you boost productivity for researchers as well. It's also looking at how do you personalize experiences. So not just as a patient, but if you are in a pharmaceutical company, for example, or a device company, how do you personalize how and what type of information you're providing to a thought leader or to your healthcare provider or to the end patient? So AI has the opportunity to drive some of these transformational experiences. Whether you're a researcher or a patient or a caregiver, you can really personalize what you're looking for. And then the last piece I would also say is around interoperability. How can you speed up research or integrate diverse and multimodal data types, genomic, literature, experimental, imaging, all of this to facilitate discovery, development, and there's a lot on the personalized treatment side, right? You can if you can really get down to the end of one, your treatments can then also be personalized to that way. So really using multimodal capabilities to support some of those advanced analyses. That's where I'm seeing things right now.
Cool. So let's fast forward then. Let's compare that to where healthcare's headed. So I do think healthcare is going to look very different 3 to 5 years from now. I used to be able to think that I could kind of project a little bit. I genuinely don't know what's coming. So I just know things are moving fast and in a very exciting way in most cases. What can you tell us about where Google is focusing in that time, and how do you think healthcare is going to look different in that window?
Yeah. And maybe I'll make this comment more specific to how Google, but also technology in general, right? Technology is really going to advance. You're thinking about 3 to 5 years out. The healthcare and life science industry is going to technology will advance it by pioneering a lot of the advanced AI, right? So think about multi-agent systems that have multimodal understanding capabilities. So what I'm thinking about is intelligent agents that are going to collaborate and autonomously process different data types. That's where you get back to the original things of what we're seeing today to be able to optimize operations and support development cycles, drug discovery, and all of that. But also, I see conversation becoming a really key interface that could be enhanced by multimodal AI for that personalization. Right? So again, using chatbots and kind of advanced AI agents that are really going to make every interaction feel much more personal. When we talk about healthcare and life sciences, we think about it from the science or from the core care perspective, but just think about how you and I interact with the system. How do we, when we're making our appointments or trying to coordinate different things, these are all ways that we would be able to provide much more coordination in the ecosystem, how you get claims authorization or prior auth. I mean, all of these things are going to be much more holistic and much more, hopefully, near turnkey in the way that these things will be moving forward. So I think it's from a Google perspective, we are committed to providing that platform and those innovations to empower the industry to do these things, to provide efficiencies, to provide the enhanced patient care, and of course, the scientific progress.
I know one area of focus from what you just described is something I've heard elsewhere about where Google is focusing is definitely that reducing the administrative burden for clinicians. That clearly has, I think it's logical. Most people can see how that can lead to a better patient experience. But is there anything in particular there that's just worth reminding us about like what the benefit is to reducing the burden for clinicians so that they can focus on what they want to do, which is care for patients?
Absolutely. That is absolutely critical, right? I think the answer still remains largely the same. It's still going to be focused on the clinical care experience. But what I'd like to add is it ultimately supports the entire system, right? So I think that we're looking at more face time, more satisfaction, more focus, ideally reduced error. If you think about it from a clinician side, these kind of capabilities allow much more clinician well-being, faster follow-ups. And so ultimately it's around how do we reduce friction that can allow new treatments and new protocols through this different research and different interactions to be delivered more effectively and more efficiently. And I should say also add at the point of care.
Yeah, it's an important piece of it. So that helps kind of clarify like where the areas of particular value or benefit can be. So I appreciate that.
Right.
Kind of plug this into one of the conversations we've been having as a theme of our show this season, which is how healthcare adjacent areas are partnering with traditional care. And a lot of times that's through a digital health benefit or app or provider of some kind. So we've brought up things regularly this season from the world of connected fitness, wellness, mental health, sleep management, nutrition, weight loss, which are a lot more of the day-to-day decisions that a consumer is making regarding their health. So, our question has been, can any of these areas benefit from what leading tech providers and solution providers are making available out there? The advancements that are happening on a day-to-day basis can any of those things help us connect those types of adjacent areas with traditional care? Can those things ultimately benefit somebody, I guess, who's trying to take care of themselves?
Such a great point, and I'm glad this has been a theme for this season's podcast. It's really interesting because you can't talk about healthcare without talking about wellness. My philosophy is always right. Well care, not sick care. And so we're moving in that direction, or we're moving to that side. When you're thinking about how tech or AI plays a role, I find it very interesting, right? Because it's no longer just about the steps that you're capturing from whatever device you're wearing around your wrist, right? It can be about continuous glucose monitors. It can be, there's so many other devices that can provide near real-time information about different biomarkers or different things about your environment, but also about what's happening inside your body. And I think that's critically important for the pharma and biotech side, because as patient-generated health data becomes valuable real-world data, this is, I think, where tech and life sciences and healthcare companies are really going to have to figure out and this is where I'm seeing the research going, is how therapies can perform outside of controlled clinical trials. So this is, I think, talking about monitoring long-term safety, identifying unmet needs, even informing future designs of different trials or how therapies are going to be applied. So I think that's one area that there's an opportunity for how tech plays a role. Another one is just, again, personalization, personalized interventions, right? One is about capturing all this information, but how do you nudge people in the right direction? So using AI, applying AI to this, where you're combining clinical and lifestyle data for these kind of personalized recommendations, is a key part of how you're going to be changing behavior. So you can talk about it. For many, many years, we're all continuously talking about adherence, but also outcomes for these different therapies or your lifestyles or how to manage your diseases. A lot of this can be done with a variety of tools that are being developed. I think to talk about something specific, I wouldn't be able to point to something very specific at this stage, but our capabilities in managing diverse data types and applying AI on the consumer side, think the physical devices that Google creates, it really does create an opportunity to bridge clinical care, wellness, and even research using that real world insights aspect that I was referencing at the beginning.
Nice. Okay. Well, that's something to keep an eye on for sure then, because I think there's a lot of possibility with where that can take us. Just like with a lot of other advancements, as we've had this road from sick care to well care, as you were describing, we have to get such a foundation in place before we can really see the benefits of things at scale. And that's kind of opening up another stage of that process of setting foundation, having the tech in place, and then us as an industry understanding what we can do now with that foundation in place.
That's right.
Well, that's an exciting part of this journey and kind of a great place for us to wrap this conversation up. I did want to give you a chance here towards the end to share with us from a personal standpoint, what gives you hope for the future of healthcare in our country. I think it's safe to say that we can learn from this question from a lot of different perspectives. It's useful to know what keeps us going. Why does that future look bright today? We don't have to focus on things that are broken, things that aren't going well. We can focus on what is going well. What gives you hope for the future of healthcare?
Look, the future of healthcare is we have so many tools in place. The pace of innovation first in AI for healthcare and life science, it's amazing, right? I'm talking about genomics, synthetic biology, and all of that. That is outstanding. But that fact that there's a growing recognition that there's a need for collaboration and data interoperability, not just within your company or within your departments, right? It's really across the entire ecosystem. So what gives me hope is that now we're seeing some very non-traditional collaborations that are happening between payers and providers and pharma and biotech. All of that is underpinned with how regulators are now starting to take a very interesting role in trying to understand the role of technology for this system. That gives me a lot of hope that this is no longer a world where we are being stiff-armed or of not being able to, we can't do this because regulators won't accept it, to seeing regulators are now trying to understand the use of technology to support the betterment of humanity. And so not just the potential to use AI in a way that supports the entire ecosystem, that's what gives me hope.
Oh, what a place for us to wrap up this conversation. Shweta, it's been a joy to have you here and give us this point of view to help us see what's going on now, but also that future state where we were describing of what's possible. And again, that foundation that's sitting at the bottom of it to enable new levels of interactions and encounters that ultimately are going to lead people to better health. That's the goal here. And it's been a pleasure to have you here. Thanks so much for joining the show today.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the great conversation.